How old do you need to be to crowd surf? This is what I want to talk about today because I just got back from Warp Tour, one of my favorite tours ever. Basically, I would say that Warp Tour is one of the reasons I am who I am today. It's a tour that I went to for a decade straight, one of the funnest things ever, one of the best decades of my entire life. And then the last 6 years or 7 years, it took that gigantic break, but it was back this year. So I just got back from Orlando this past weekend. Um, there's a lot of things that I could talk about Warp Tour. There's a lot of different things and nuances that I observed that are different than what it was 7 years ago or when I was growing up doing it, and just the vibe and how things are different. But one thing that I want to bring up, and one thing that I didn't really see a lot when I was growing up, was children crowd surfing. So this is something I want to talk about, with the main question that I want to definitely bring up some conversation in the comments is, how old do you need to be to go crowd surfing? And one, would I let my children crowd surf? Am I okay with children crowd surfing? And there's two answers to this. Obviously, a yes or a no, or a correct age. But there are a couple nuances that I want to at least talk about to see if you guys agree. So I saw a variety of children, crowd surfing up to the front. It's an awesome experience. I used to do it a little bit more. I'm a little bit heavier now, but I love crowd surfing, and I am an advocate for crowd surfing. Now I run the elevator service in the back, where I'm literally just hoisting people up for the entirety of the song or whatever, and I love doing that. But I did see a number of kids crowd surfing at Warp Tour this time around, and a lot of different thoughts went through my head. I would say the youngest was maybe like 6 or 7 years old, the oldest probably being like 12 or 10 years old. And there's a lot of things that went through my head. One was, of course, I guess if I think back to when I went to Warp Tour for the first time, I was, like 17 years old, and there was definitely a lot more kids there. I guess, and by kids, I mean under the age of 18. And me being one of those, 16, 17 years old at my first Warp Tour. My brother, I think, was like 15 years old at his first Warp Tour. And yeah, there were definitely kids crowd surfing, 15, 16 years old. And it was a blast. That's when we were jumping up in the crowd. We were body surfing, like up and down, up to the gate and everything, singing along to our favorite front men up there. And I didn't think of anything of it back then. And for some reason, I just had thoughts of it this time. And maybe it's because they were 6 or 7 years old, but I think we need to draw this line. Obviously, the easy answer is you shouldn't crowd surf till you're 18, and there's two reasons for that. The biggest one being perverts. I think that people always bring up, and there's always a giant stink about, I went crowd surfing and someone touched my butt. It's like, no freaking duh, dude. Like, would you rather someone support you by your butt or just drop you 6 feet onto your neck? Like, sometimes it's the only way to save somebody, and you just have to be okay with that. I would say this, and I'm obviously not advocating for people who are purposefully doing that. I think that there's no place for that in the scene. There's no place for that at any concert. I will say this, though. I do think that the majority of people who are crowd surfing or helping crowd surf are not doing it in any sort of perverted way, because there's really no place for that in the scene. And I do think that that's something that will get policed if it is seen. If people are saying weird stuff, or if somebody observes somebody actively like grabbing women or men in a sexual or weird way, people will 100% call that out. So I would say for the majority, crowd surfing is a safe activity as far as getting like groped or touched inappropriately. I would say that for the majority of times, and of course I am definitely not going to say that it doesn't happen, because it 100% happens. And there are weirdos out there who are into this kind of stuff and will go out there and grab people inappropriately or be like, oh dude, I touched a butt. That's so messed up. Please do not do that. And if you see it, bring it up, dude. If somebody in the crowd is gloating about grabbing girls' butts as they crowd surf, I'm telling you right now, it will be policed there, right then and there, and it will not be good for that person. So I would say for the majority, that's something that is hard to call out. That's something that just doesn't really fly if it's something that's actively happening. My biggest concern, I would say, for crowd surfing 100% is safety. There is always a chance that you can get dropped, that you could get trampled, that you could fall on your neck, that you could fall on your leg, that somebody could step on you, that somebody will not catch you, that they'll surf you into the pit, that they'll surf you over the gate, and there could be too many people. I would say if This is tough, man. Yeah, that is my 100% concern. I would say I am definitely concerned about weirdos like just having their hands over my kids or just over kids in general, of course. I just talked about how that was an okay thing. It's not necessarily whether or not it's okay or not okay. Me personally, I just don't necessarily want a bunch of strangers' hands like on my children. So that's just a personal preference, I guess. I would say that the biggest concern of mine would be safety. So, what age is okay to crowd surf? Frick, man. 18 plus is definitely in the okay, in the green. Do whatever you want, 18 years old. Crowd surf as many times as you want. But I think that there really isn't a limit on this. You know, if you feel comfortable letting your kids crowd surf, do it. I would say that a lot of times there's a lot of attention in these pits, in these crowds, where they will literally stop their activities to ensure the safety of children. That is the most important thing at these shows. If you're crowd surfing a child, every single time that it happened, the crowd was extremely receptive. They were all very polite. Everyone stopped, everyone cheered, everyone let it happen. And it was the same for the pit as well. Kids were in there sometimes. Obviously, you know, you let them have their few minutes of fun. That's a thing. Let them crowd surf, have their few minutes of fun. That is a risk that you're taking as far as safety goes because they can drop your child. But I would say overall, at least at Warped Tour in Orlando, from what I observed, it was a somewhat safe activity. I still said in the back of my mind I would never let my kid do this, but you know what? From what I witnessed, it was a little bit better handled than I thought it was going to be. So if you want to let your kids crowd surf, by all means, freaking do it, dude. I don't care. Heck yeah, let's go. I would say that people are super respectful. It's interesting though. That's kind of just my thoughts. I guess I didn't really have a clear, concise thought, but I do want to know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down in the comments. Love you guys so freaking much. We'll catch you on the next video.